They were never meant to be found.
Every grave hides a story.
Some stories should stay buried.
Cornelius Ashcroft had never imagined that a simple survey could lead him into the depths of something unspoken, a world beyond ordinary comprehension. The valley of Harrowfield, remote and narrow, pressed against the sky with gray rock walls that seemed to frown down on him, held an unsettling quiet. A flat black creek cut through its center, reflecting the muted sunlight in a way that made it seem alive, darkly patient, as if waiting for something or someone to arrive. The air itself was heavy with history, or perhaps with memory, carrying with it a stillness that did not promise peace. Cornelius was a tall man, more than 6 feet, lean and worn by work that had demanded both strength and precision. His hands were calloused in places that spoke of careful measurement and delicate observation, ink stained at the knuckles, the evidence of a lifetime spent recording what was seen, what mattered. Arriving in Harrowfield to complete a survey left unfinished by 2 predecessors, he felt the weight of the unknown pressing down, subtle but insistent, a presence that seemed to accompany him even before he knew why. The first days were spent establishing the basics, measuring the western ridge line, tracing the course of the creek for miles, marking boundaries of a parcel of land purchased decades earlier by a man named Aldrich Ashcraft. Cornelius noted the coincidences of names, his own, the landlady's, the parcel, but brushed them aside, trying to focus on the tangible. Yet there was an unease, a murmur beneath the surface of his thoughts, a sense that the land itself was aware of him, evaluating, waiting. He lodged with Augustina Fell, a widow whose eyes never fully met his. There was a deliberate slowness in her movements, a peculiar awareness that made him question where her attention truly rested. Breakfasts and dinners were quiet affairs. She asked no questions, offered no small talk, only watched, eyes slightly to the left, never entirely on him. It was disorienting, unnerving, but also strangely comforting, a neutral presence in a valley that felt otherwise charged with expectation. The Ashcraft house revealed itself gradually, glimpsed through breaks in the trees, the upper pasture giving way to scrub. From afar, it looked less like a dwelling than a statement, precise, symmetrical, built with an almost severe correctness that was at odds with the wildness of the valley around it. Cornelius found himself pausing mid-step, captivated by its quiet authority, sensing something in its walls that existed beyond architecture, something older, persistent, a weight of intention. In the town, the locals offered fragments of information, each piece delivered without emphasis, as if acknowledging the presence of a story too large for ordinary words. Wilhelmina, a retired teacher, finally revealed details to Cornelius, slowly peeling back layers of the Ashcraft history. Aldrich had arrived from somewhere unknown, built the house alone in a manner that seemed impossible for one man, and established a line that would persist, anchored by the family and the land. Orla, his wife, came quietly into the picture, appearing one day as if by inevitability. Their children, Reuben, Sylvester, and Merritt, occupied the land and house in ways that defied simple observation. Their movements, their stillness, carried the echo of something profound and continuous. Cornelius approached the house with purpose several times to verify boundary markers, each journey steeped in a growing awareness of observation. Sylvester Ashcraft appeared at the edge of the trees, a figure that seemed more a part of the land than a human observer. His stillness, the wrongness in his proportions, the quiet authority he held in space, left Cornelius with a deep, unshakable impression. He was being watched not merely by men, but by the persistence of something older, something woven into the very air and stone. Inside, the house was cool, not uncomfortably so, but in a way that spoke of thick walls, of air held and measured, of time that slowed within the stone. Merritt guided him through rooms that were both ordinary and strange. Furniture aged but maintained, clocks that ran slow yet steady, fireplaces cold yet commanding, floors that seemed to remember each step. Cornelius tried to map, measure, record. He found that precision was insufficient, that the reality of the house and its inhabitants operated on a different logic, one that could be described but never contained. He recorded observations meticulously, noting the cellar, unusually large for the structure above, filled with objects whose age and purpose defied simple explanation. The more he attempted specificity, the less adequate the descriptions became. There was a sense of continuity here, a history not written in public records but sustained through proximity and example, through practices repeated and passed down. Cornelius felt the hum of time, pressing, insistent, through stone, wood, and glass. Merritt spoke plainly, revealing aspects of Aldrich's origins and the function of the Ashcraft name as a marker, a line that persisted across time, anchored physically to land and house, but understood only through awareness and recognition. The implications were vast, unsettling. Identity, geography, and continuity entwined in ways that could not be captured in conventional surveys. Cornelius wrote in his journal, torn between recording facts and preserving the meaning carried in silence. Some pages were later torn out, not from fear, but from understanding the weight of permanence and the subtle power that writing down such truths could enact. Repeated visits followed, each drawn by the unfinished quality of the presence, by reflections in warped glass that did not align with reality, by the expectation embedded in the stillness of those who observed. Nights were restless, filled with the subtle shifts of air, unnameable pressures, the awareness of a being or force present but unseen. Cornelius's awareness of being known, watched, understood in ways beyond language, grew with each visit, each observation, each step taken on the slope and in the house. As he completed the survey and submitted his report, Cornelius carried more than measurements. He carried the awareness of persistence beyond consent, of lines and names, of presence and recognition, etched into the land and air. The Ashcraft family, the house, and Harrowfield itself existed outside ordinary history, beyond newspapers and county records, surviving in the impressions of a man trained to observe, measure, and note, yet humbled by the weight of something immeasurable. Cornelius would live with this awareness for decades, writing sporadically about what he could not fully capture, until his death in 1911. The journal, found among his effects, revealed the persistence of observation, the pressure of presence, the way that some things travel with us without consent, unchanging, quietly present, shaping the boundaries of perception and reality. The Ashcraft line remained. Harrowfield disappeared from maps, yet the continuity endured, a testament to what lies beyond ordinary comprehension, waiting, patient, and eternal. Cornelius had been away from the house for only a few days when the sensation of unfinished business pulled him back. Each step along the worn path toward the upper slope was deliberate, measured, yet it carried a growing anticipation, a quiet insistence that he did not yet understand. The trees swayed lightly, their shadows stretching and shifting with the sun, as if aware of his approach. The air held a charged weight, subtle but pervasive, a reminder that Harrowfield was not a place for casual observation. It was a place that watched as much as it was watched. As he reached the stone house, the familiar outline of its precise architecture drew his attention. Symmetry and proportion conveyed authority. The walls seemed to breathe, the windows reflecting not just light, but a sense of expectation. Merritt stood on the porch, her posture straight, her arms resting calmly at her sides. Gray eyes met his with an expression that was neither relief nor curiosity, but a quiet acknowledgement, the kind that seemed to measure him against something he could not see. Cornelius dismounted, the leather of his saddle creaking under his careful movements, and the gravel under his boots crackled in protest or warning. It was impossible to tell. Inside, the house was cooler than the morning air outside, but not cold in the ordinary sense. It was the cool of contained history, of walls that had absorbed decades of observation and action. Cornelius followed Merritt through hallways and sitting rooms, each step echoing slightly, as if the house itself was registering his presence. The furniture, though old, was well maintained. The fireplace held no fire, but radiated an authority that commanded attention. A tall clock ticked steadily, yet its rhythm was not mechanical. It had a fractional pause, a breathing quality that seemed to synchronize with the human pulse. Cornelius's survey work provided a cover for his repeated visits. He measured, noted, and sketched, yet his awareness constantly shifted to the subtler aspects of the house. The way shadows gathered in corners, the soft distortion in the reflections of glass, the nuanced gestures of Merit as she guided him through spaces that seemed ordinary, yet carried layers of meaning. Objects in the cellar continued to baffle him. Vessels of unknown purpose, implements that suggested both utility and ritual, and arrangements that defied simple categorization. Each discovery reinforced the sense that the house had a logic beyond the ordinary, one that required observation, patience, and humility to comprehend. The nights were restless. Cornelius lay awake, listening to the shifting air, noting the absence of ordinary sounds and the presence of subtle pressures that seemed to inhabit the room with him. Every creak of floorboard, every sigh of the wind through the trees, carried significance he could not articulate. He rose at odd hours to check doors and windows, methodically and deliberately, a ritual born of instinct rather than fear. Each inspection affirmed the physical security of the house, yet the pressure, the unnameable presence, remained a silent companion to his thoughts. His journal became both a record and a meditation. He documented the sensations that could not be fully described, the weight of being observed, the strange alignment of reflections in warped glass, the uncanny stillness of Sylvester when he had been seen from a distance. Cornelius wrote about the temporal rhythms of the house, the family, and the valley itself, capturing patterns that defied measurement yet demanded recognition. Each entry was an attempt to bridge perception and understanding, to honor the persistence of something greater than ordinary history, something continuous and deliberate. Cornelius began to notice subtleties in the behavior of the family. Reuben's functional speech, the silence of Sylvester, Merritt's calm composure, all were parts of a larger rhythm that the house and land seemed to enforce. Cornelius recorded these patterns meticulously, trying to discern rules that might explain their presence, yet understanding that the logic operated on a level beyond conventional reasoning. The house contained more than walls and furniture. It contained expectation, lineage, continuity, and a persistent acknowledgement of presence. Repeated interactions with the house and its occupants deepened Cornelius's understanding. The pressure of observation intensified, yet so did a strange respect, a sense of being integrated into a system far older than himself. Objects in the cellar, once inexplicable, began to suggest continuity, a thread linking past and present, anchored by the Ashcraft family and the land itself. Cornelius's measurements were precise, but they were secondary to the awareness he carried, a knowledge that the house, the family, and the valley had persisted long before him, and would persist long after. Even after his work was complete, Cornelius could not leave. The survey had been submitted, accurate and thorough, yet a pull remained, a quiet insistence of unfinished recognition. He returned multiple times, often without professional necessity, drawn by the sensation that some understanding awaited him, something that could only be absorbed by proximity, attention, and reflection. The reflections in the windows, the stillness of the family, the alignment of the house with the ridge and valley, each offered lessons he could not yet articulate. Over weeks, Cornelius's observations became increasingly acute. The house, valley, and family communicated through presence and subtle cues rather than words. The rhythm of Harrowfield was not audible or tangible in conventional terms. It was experienced, felt in chest and mind. Cornelius recorded these sensations with care, understanding that the true nature of the Ashcraft line, the continuity and persistence, could not be contained in words alone. Each journal entry, each sketch, Each measurement was an attempt to honor the depth of observation demanded by a house and family that existed beyond ordinary history. Even as he left Harrowfield for days at a time, the valley remained with him. The weight of the unseen, the persistence of presence, and the unspoken continuity of the Ashcraft-Toft line followed, pressing subtly on his consciousness. Nights were restless. He awoke to subtle shifts in air, to presences that had no form or sound but whose awareness was undeniable. Cornelius understood, increasingly, that some truths do not belong to history or records. They belong to perception, memory, and acknowledgement. And Harrowfield, the stone house, and the family continued to exist, persistent and patient, beyond maps, beyond ordinary comprehension, leaving Cornelius both witness and participant in a continuum that would outlast him, as it had outlasted countless others who had ventured into the valley before him. Cornelius finally left Harrowfield with the survey complete, the eastern boundary markers confirmed, and the county's paperwork finalized. Yet, as his horse carried him down the familiar path, he felt the valley's pull in ways words could never capture. Each step south seemed to deepen the imprint of the house, of the family, and of the unseen currents that had guided his attention for weeks. The weight of presence was no longer tied to walls or windows. It had become a part of him, a quiet insistence that some things are never entirely escaped. The journey south to the nearest town took 6 days, each night reinforcing the subtle pressure he carried. Cornelius camped by creeks, checked his locks and bedrolls, and observed the air with the same meticulous care he had applied to his survey notes. It was a practice born not of fear, but of respect. Harrowfield, the Ashcraft-Toft family, and the house itself had imparted a lesson. Some continuities, some truths, travel with us without our consent, quietly persisting even when unseen. In the town, Cornelius refrained from speaking of the valley's peculiarities. He submitted his survey report, accurate and professional, detailing coordinates and dimensions in the standard county format. The report contained no hint of what he had truly experienced, no mention of the presence that had watched, guided, and shaped his perception. The county accepted it without question, his payment released promptly. To anyone else, the survey was complete. To Cornelius, the work had only begun in another sense, the work of understanding, of living with what he had witnessed. Weeks passed, and Cornelius returned to his normal surveying duties elsewhere. Yet nights remained restless, and a sensation of being known, watched, and marked persisted. He wrote in his gray journal sporadically, capturing the echoes of Harrowfield, the warped reflections in window glass, the measured stillness of Sylvester, the precise but unreadable presence of Merritt. Each entry was a meditation, an attempt to preserve the imperceptible, to honor a continuity that existed independently of observation or documentation. Years later, the journal would reveal patterns that defied ordinary understanding. Cornelius noted moments when the air itself seemed to press against him, the way certain spaces demanded attention without explanation, the awareness that some things persisted across generations, sustained not by knowledge but by proximity, recognition, and presence. Harrowfield had imparted its essence into him, not as a record, but as a weight, a rhythm, a sense that the world contained layers inaccessible to ordinary history. Cornelius grew older, his observations extending beyond Harrowfield, but always returning to it in memory. He wrote about how the Ashcraft-Toft line functioned as a seam, a point of continuity, not confined to family, geography, or record. It was something persistent, existing in a threshold between perception and reality, demanding acknowledgement without the ability to fully comprehend. In every shadow, every reflection, every quiet observation, he felt that presence continue, patient, insistent, enduring. When Cornelius died in 1911, he left the journal among his personal effects. The housekeeper, Corinthia, who had been with him in his final years, attested that he had always been aware of something in the house that was quietly present, never threatening, yet undeniably alive in its subtle assertion of continuity. The sensation of being known, of carrying weight beyond ordinary comprehension, had been his companion, as she noted that it had dissipated only after his passing, as though the presence had finally released him. Harrowfield itself faded from maps, the post office and stores erased in successive revisions. The stone house, the Ashcraft-Toff family, and the continuity of their line remained, quietly persistent, existing beyond the reach of conventional history. The valley, its creeks, ridges, and the stone walls of Fell Hollow bore witness to centuries of presence, observation, and survival, holding the stories of those who had come and gone, leaving marks that were invisible to ordinary eyes. Cornelius's life, though outwardly ordinary after leaving the valley, had been forever altered. He carried Harrowfield within him. The understanding of persistence, the quiet awareness of presence, the unspoken instruction to observe, record, and acknowledge what exists beyond perception. The line of the Ashcraft-Toff family, the stone house, the warped reflections, and the unnameable pressures of air became a silent companion, a testament to truths that do not belong solely to maps, records, or official history, but to consciousness itself. The story of Cornelius, the Ashcraft-Toff family, and the Valley of Harrowfield exists beyond newspapers, files, and county records. It lives in the weight of perception, in the quiet insistence of presence, in the continuation of lines that anchor continuity in a world otherwise ruled by absence and forgetting. For those who pay attention, who walk with careful awareness and a willingness to acknowledge the unseen, Harrowfield remains persistent and patient, teaching that some things endure quietly and imperceptibly, without consent, yet impossible to ignore. And so, if you ever find yourself in a place where the walls feel thicker than they should, where reflections do not align, and where names carry weight beyond reason, remember Cornelius Ashcroft, the surveyor who learned too late and yet bore the presence of Harrowfield with quiet patience for the rest of his life. It is in his awareness, in his observations, in his journal, that the continuity of a name, a line, and a presence endures, patiently waiting for recognition, for understanding, for those who can see beyond the ordinary.